Okay, all right, looks like we're going to get started. Thank you for coming. My name is Michael Stage, and I'm going to be talking about using IF tools for teaching nonfiction. And I've come to two NarraScopes in person and two online, and I've seen a lot of great talks about using nonfiction and telling sort of historical stories or doing social events, that sort of thing. This is technical nonfiction instruction, which we'll see. And this comes because I'm actually an astrophysicist, and I taught introductory and intermediate astronomy for many years, which was the subject of using these tools for this was the subject of a talk I gave in 2024 that is probably not currently on the website. It had pretty bad audio, but we will be getting it posted, and it's a good companion piece. I go into detail that I can't in the beginning of this talk. I'm also currently the sort of the MC of the Boston meetup group, so you can find me there because I'm a longtime fan of interactive fiction. So the first part of this is about reaching students, and I'm going to just recap a little bit the concepts from the other talk, and then explain how I think we can broaden this out into the real world. So one of the focuses that I had in my astronomy teaching was actually working with different technologies to improve the experience in a large lecture. Oops. I guess we need the arrow keys. To improve the experience in a large lecture format. And so there's all these different kinds of things that you can do in the classroom. And two of them that are the most IF-like to begin with would be using clickers, which was a little mini revolution in education about 25 years ago. And then online homework, parameterized homework, where what I spent a lot of time doing, in addition, I did a number of contracts with McGraw-Hill Higher Education working on various digital auxiliaries, including writing responses to when students would use this kind of a homework so that it would figure out, did they forget to turn kilometers into light years? Did they forget to leave a square? And then giving them the feedback to nudge them back in the right direction. So anybody that writes parser IF knows all about that problem. It's exhausting. But these tools, as good as they are, and if you're doing astronomy or other physical sciences, maybe there are full-blown professional tools. That's what that picture of the sun is there. Or maybe you could use a planetarium or planetarium software if you're doing astronomy. All of these things are great, but there is a kind of problem that they do not handle well. And that's anything that is a system that's web-like, and the nodes have complicated interrelationships between them. And we're going to see, I'm going to show you examples of that in a moment. But if you have something that's like that, then a planetarium software or a full-blown professional tool won't work, especially in intro. It's too complicated, and it obscures the rules and the principles that you're trying to teach of some idea, like where does the sun go across the sky at different times of the year? And you turn to something like what you see in the bottom corner, which is something, this is a little stripped down applet where some of those details of real professional or full-blown simulations have been stripped out. These tools are the product usually of a company that's hired to do the programming, subject matter experts like myself who are hired for the content, the publisher, and when you convolve those three sources together, something is always going to be limited: technology, time, money. There are issues. So these things are almost universally disappointing in my experience teaching. And they're the best. This limited simulation is the best you can do. So it turns out, and they usually fail for systems that involve any of these things, which is what I was just talking about, a web-like idea where the phases are interrelated. And it turns out, what is that? Well, that's something that IF tools were made for. You want to explore the space. So the last, when I was last teaching at UMass a few years ago, I had come out of my dark ages with IF during the pandemic, and I knew about things like Twine and choice-based systems. So I built these prototype applets to use with my class for teaching these ideas. And the basic categories is something that involves multidimensional classification. So stars are a good example of this. It's something where you have an object, it has a main parameter, in this case mass, that determines, in this case through physics, all the other parameters that go with it. How long a star lives, what's going to happen to it at the end of its life, what color it is, how luminous it actually is. But aggregating that information, it's not so easy to learn that with a table or a graph. But if you create something where a student can crawl around and traverse the space, then the narrative of this tool is that understanding. The tools are built for this. It's not much of an extension then to imagine a cyclically varying system, which might not be cyclically varying linearly. That's what I'm going to show you with the electrons app that I built. That's about an atom that's absorbing and emitting light, which happens at very particular colors. and understanding how that happens as an electron is going up and down its energy levels. Again, extremely difficult, one of the most difficult topics that I taught over those years. If we vary that a little bit, we might have a one-way process, something where we might imagine the steps required to change an orbit from a circle around Earth to an ellipse to a circular orbit around Mars. That was the subject of the third app there. And then the limited simulation that I was just describing, I wrote one of these for the path of the sun, because to explore that, you want to be able to look at different places on Earth, different days of the year, different times of day, different directions you're looking on the horizon, and you want to be able to vary one or all those in whatever order you want. Very hard to do that, very inefficient to do that with a planetarium software. Very easy to do that with Twine or a choice-based tool. So I built these things, and before I show you a little bit of them, and there's a lot more about this in the 2024 talk, just very quickly, the point is that they worked. They worked really well. I did try to do innovation for 25 years, and nothing ever works. You never get bumps. This is I'm going to show very quickly some histograms where the red is going to be students who used the app, and the blue is students who didn't. And it was available to everybody, but they just kind of half and halved it. And this resulted in a beautiful data set that I can compare. This is my honors class of 19 students. This is the scores that they got on the quiz that were the questions relating to this electron level tutorial. Everybody who did well on the quiz, you can see, is in the right over there that used the app. Everybody that did poorly, none of them used the app, and there's a little overlap in the middle. That's beautiful. If we go out to a big 205 student class, which is Gen Ed, I've done a couple of grade cuts here. This is the homework for the students. Again, on the top, the histogram of those who used the tutorial, on the bottom, those who didn't. And the red on the top, the histogram is much higher for the students that did it, significantly so, 3 sigma here. This is grade cut. So these are the B+ to A students that were already doing well in the course, but they still improve using the app. This is the passing to B students. Again, the histograms are much higher on the far side. And that carried over to the quiz, which is pretty amazing. That's the thing. Sometimes you get a bump in the homework, but not on the quiz. Here we see the histogram on the top, the average score. Again, scores increasing to the right. The quiz questions related to this, they're doing better. So why do they do better? Well, they do better because it looks like this. It allows them to crawl around the space of this idea. And this is an energy level diagram. This is taken from the tutorial. The tutorials are available on my itch page. There's links in the talk there. stagefiction.itch.io. We start out in the energy level 0 there, and we can absorb or emit. So it gives us choices for what we can absorb, and we might select that we're going to absorb this ultraviolet photon there, and when we do that, we see the red line goes up to the middle. Now our electron is in the middle of the diagram, and we could emit. So those are orange arrows going down. We could absorb. Those are those blue arrows going up. And if we try to emit something that we can't, then we catch that and we find out we can't and we learn why. And then so the student can, well, instead, let's emit a different energy, let's absorb something and then emit something. And so they can wander around this space in whatever order they want and eventually come to that understanding. That's why we see that improvement. When they make a misstep, we provide the feedback to put them back on the path. So this is what I mean by crawling around the spaces of these ideas. This is under the hood in Twine for that. The red boxes are the different energy level states that are possible in the simulation. You don't see any lines connecting them because they can all be connected to the others. All the links in this program are handled in the subroutines in green. But you can see it's not complicated. This stuff doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be complicated. It was very fast to build. It actually took me longer to make the pictures than to do the Twine programming for these. This is just what the star classification aggregation looks like. You wander around and collect the properties, and it does the same sort of thing where it gives you feedback. And there's that multi-dimensional aspect for the solar example. Why does it work? It works because what we need to teach an issue like this is the exact things that IF tools and IF games give us. They give the player agency, you give the person using it agency. It handles the nonlinearity of the subject automatically, and they're novel, so it keeps the person engaged. To keep somebody engaged, they're going to learn what you're trying to communicate to them, and they're going to be happy about it. So let's talk about doing this in the real world, because maybe now it shouldn't be so hard to imagine. I could use these same tools to train somebody in the workplace. And I'm not talking actually about replacing those state-mandated videos for ethics training that are followed by the multiple choice quizzes, although I think that's a great use case for doing some story-based nonfiction IF. But I'm talking about industrial tasks. You can train somebody how to use a piece of machinery. You could train somebody troubleshooting procedures for an assembly process. And the great thing about IF, and this is compared to any of those other educational technologies, is if you do something wrong, you can have it affect the results 10 steps later. That's something that educational software that I've used doesn't handle well. Multi-step is very difficult because of the branching.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
All right, so I'd love to show you a real example of this. I've been talking to some people that run factories. I don't have one. Even if I did, it'd be a process that you wouldn't know. And I wouldn't be allowed to show you because it would be protected corporate IP. So there is a little slide here I'm going to breeze past. It just gives you an idea. If you were going to teach somebody how to do a sewing machine, you would have different modules based on dealing with the settings for the tension, dealing with threading, dealing with the bobbin, and so on. But let's move on to reaching consumers, where I can show you a real app that I'm working on right now. It's in development. It's not public yet, but it's in development. I did spend a little while working on the side at Gray Matter Books, which is a huge bookstore in Hadley, Massachusetts, with 40,000 volumes, 3 giant rooms, and a little smaller store in New Haven, Connecticut. And we always had some, I made little maps for the store. We had issues that people would ask questions. Now, you always want the clerk to interact, find out what people are interested in, show them the parts of the store when it's a big store, when you have all sorts of cross-disciplinary stuff, where is it? So we're working on this little app, though, that if you're in the back of the store, you can scan a QR code on the wall, bring up the app, see if your question's in there. If you're shy and you don't want to talk to the clerk, this is going to lead them to buy something. And so one of the examples here, this is what I've done here, simulate with links the behavior of the program. So there's a number of live links here. One of the questions we'd always get is, where are the biographies? Well, biographies actually didn't have their own section. If it was an author, it was with their books. If it was a a politician or a historical figure, they would be in history and so on. What about art books? Tell me about the art books. Okay, so you could show me the different kinds of sections that you divided into, or do you have giant, elephant-sized volumes of Renaissance art? Well, yes, indeed we do. And we can show you where they are. So this is what we're experimenting, is putting these little maps into it that indicate where you need to be in the store. This is the art room. There's 3 rooms like this. These were maps I had made to solve the same problem 10 years before I knew that these tools existed. So that's something that's actually in development and gives you an idea of how you could use this to reach consumers, maybe in a way that you wouldn't have thought of. It's very niche. But probably the reason you came is to think about reaching voters. So I'm going to spend the last few minutes talking about that. And here, I just want to say, I wanted to give this talk this year because it is a big election year. There are a lot of small campaigns, even small campaigns for state house races. I ran field ops for a small campaign for state house in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And I really wish I'd known about these tools then, because it is impossible. Small campaigns are often, a new candidate has no money. It's very hard to fundraise. Mailers are a fortune. Media is very difficult. Newspapers are disappearing and they might not reach the right audience. So you want something that's digital, that can go out and be shared. You can put something out on social media and find it. And campaigns like that, little campaigns, are badly in need of people with the skills that everybody in this room has. They need people with technical knowledge. They need people who can write well. They often need people who can run a spreadsheet to do treasury. So think about, if you see somebody, think about asking them, hey, can I help you with something? Because I would have really done some things. The areas of the sorts of apps you do are probably going to be in the ballpark of the super FAQ idea, where I think you can kind of intuit where this is going, that you're going to be asking questions instead of having it be a passive process. But if there's a really complicated issue or some economic thing going on, you might write something that's more like those limited simulations that I was showing, or more like a troubleshooting scenario. And there is room here for story-driven IF if the candidate or the issue, if there's a story to tell, there's something you can do with that. But one of the, what are the advantages here, and the one that's on the previous slide, is that when you have a voter who's interacting with this, they are in the driver's seat. They are asking the questions. It's not the politician writing the narrative. The player has the agency to be part of that narrative. So we've automatically achieved something, engaging people in something political that is often not there, or often there's a friction with that. They're easy to build. You can make them quickly, so you can react to current events. Engaged people are going to want to share it with others. A few things to be careful of. You're adding to, not replacing, traditional communication for that campaign. And if you're going to do something, you really better make sure everything is approved to the message that they want, down every little twisty passage that you have in your choice-based routine. And you want to make sure people don't get frustrated. It has to be user-friendly, which some of that educational software is not. But if people get turned off by the software, you're going to be in trouble with the candidate. I actually have something real to show you. I built a demo based on the issue of single-payer healthcare, which has been something people have been fighting for in Massachusetts for 25 or 30 years. There's an organization called MassCare. And I went to their website and I gathered up all of the different fact information and economic things and details that they had. And I built a demo that looks like this under the hood in Twine. And let me bring the cursor over and just point out a couple things. You see immediately why this is a better solution potentially for transmitting this information than just having a fact on a website or multiple different pages. You're putting the player in the driver's seat. We start with a main question index, and so they can pick the area they want, because some people want to know what's going to be covered, and then they get taken out to the coverage part. Some people want to know the economic impact on businesses. If you're a business owner, small business owner, you want to see that. If your town has a budget problem, you want to go to the town budget information. If you want to know how the state's going to administer it, you've got to go to where it says trust there. So it gives the person learning about it the ability to choose and not be feeling like they're following your narrative. They are. You're going to give them the information, but it gives them that choice and it's going to engage them. Then the second thing here is that when they pick whatever that first subject is, you can lead them a little bit. You know the next 2 or 3 things that they want to do. And so there's just, one or a few links that go around. You can start leading them around the ring. So you have this control to both hand the person you want to engage control for the narrative, but also add your control to the narrative in a way that you wouldn't have if they got bored and left the website. The longer they're engaged, the more they get out of it. Very quickly, I've mentioned most of these pitfalls, so I'm just going to mention that website integration has surprised me as being a difficulty. In the education space, it was very easy to take my Twine HTMLs and get them posted where my students could see them. For something that's in the private sector, you might have somebody that you're working with who has a hosting ecosystem that's not friendly to embedding. Something to be aware of. If you have good solutions to that, feel free to talk to me. And then these issues about making sure that they're accurate and that people can navigate the games. So finally, though, still, despite those difficulties, these tools provide agency and novelty that engages people in something that they might, that you want them to learn or that they might need to learn if it's a worker in a factory. They handle the nonlinearity in a way that nothing else I know does. So the built-in features are exactly what you need. I'm interested in people doing this in real life. If you do this, feel free to reach out to me. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, on the Discord server. My itch page is stagefiction.io, which is where the astronomy demos can be found, and they are playable. And do reach out, because I'd love to collaborate with people, find out what you're doing, offer you, my experience on this. Thank you very much. I don't know if you want to take one, or if there's any questions. I don't know if we have time to take one.
I'm thinking about creating something that might need to be updated a lot, and if you have any advice on what tricks to something, if you're in the bookstore, things get moved around.
Right. That is why the maps that I showed you are completely wrong. The best I can do for that, I did do maintenance on some of the products I did in the education sphere for the publishing company, and you basically, I don't know any better way to do it other than that you have to commit to some period of time that you're going to make changes as necessary. So I think the best advice would be either, if this is a situation where someone's paying you, have a maintenance contract that covers a few years, if you can get somebody to pay you to do this, or alternatively, Twine isn't that hard. Have a plan for a handoff would be my other thought. If you don't want to do it, it is a problem. The advantage in the political side is that if you're doing a campaign or something, they build very quickly and then they explode. So that one you're lucky. But yeah, it's an issue. Yeah.
Do you feel like the reason why it's more effective in the education field is that it's more conversational, it's more natural ways to engage with the content as opposed to just reading block text or like the traditional format of having old sheets?
So the question is, do I think it succeeds more in education because it's a conversational mode instead of something where you're being fed the information as a block of text or something like that? Yes, absolutely. And that was what the motion was in the field, was to make things more interactive with the clickers and with flipped classrooms and things like that. And I think this you have control where you're still guiding. And this was what I did in laboratory work in the class too. I would try to guide. And so here you can guide, but you can make it conversational. And that, I think that aspect of it is tremendously important and much of why it succeeds. The best thing you can do to get somebody to learn something is keep them engaged in it. And this adds that timer. So.
Yeah, 1 minute.
I guess,
Yes.
was there anything on the Discord or?
Not
Just-
that I can-
okay.
You got some
Well-
claps?
That's great. Okay, well, I guess if there's nothing else, feel free to,
I just have a quick question. In your experience, as using this type of game, have you ever had any notes about styling? What people might prefer about your car? Like, it's like not conceal, or even like having a little bit more like story over it? I'm curious about this.
so the question is, has there been feedback about styling and what might work better for people, what they might prefer to interact with? And I'm sorry to say, I don't know. In fact, I would trust the people who write games. I've written a few things for myself, but I never released a game. And I would trust to some extent the experience of people who write games that you might know what will draw people in. For the app, I'm definitely coordinating with the bookstore owner who has a lot of style about how we want things to look. And actually, the Harlow built-in is pretty close to a good starting point for us. But it's I think it's a conversation you have to have and think hard about. You do have to think hard about a lot of these things. So thank you very much.